Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Tuesday, July 29th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's choosing to join us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet, and it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 20 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again, absolutely free. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one where people have been stepped through that worksheet process. And if you choose to listen to them even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. And we hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. And secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, we would appreciate you doing so. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, and or you can email Jeanie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. And if we get a question or a comment from you, a testimonial or even a refutation of something that's being presented, we'll address it on the internet show, and then as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time that occurred, so you can listen back to the archives for your feedback or input. And we greatly appreciate whenever anybody chooses to do that, because it makes it infinitely easier for us to live into our intention with this work. The intention we have with this work is to be a service, and that is just boatloads easier to do when we know how these things are landing for you. So please let us know what's on your mind. How are these things landing for you? I was looking at, talking to a couple people in the past few days about a book by what is her name? Gabrielle Bernstein. And she has a book titled Judgment Detox. And it's probably not a coincidence. She's probably had some exposure to Course in Miracles, perhaps even the Way of Mastery. And she understands the same fundamental teaching from the Course in Miracles and the Way of Mastery, that judgment itself is a pain creator. It's better used as an alarm system than a tool for bringing about change. So it's Gabrielle Bernstein, Bernstein, Judgment Detox. Release the beliefs that hold you back from living a better life. And it was coming up in the past couple of days because of conversations with people, and because she's actively advocating for and coaching people right through the book and the audible version of the book that I'm listening to. She's coaching people to do EFT tapping within the context of this format about dismantling judgment or ending the addiction or the habitual pattern of judging that we've been conditioned into in our culture, you might say brainwashed into. So just, another book, if it resonates with you. She's a younger woman who is clearly reading some of the same source material, but she's got a different style about her. And if it resonates with you, more power to you. How to get rid of your addiction to judgment, or how to detoxify from the effects of all the time we've spent judging in our lives. So back to reading from the book A Walk in the Physical by Christian Sundberg. The next question from the Q&A section in the third section of this book is titled, I have a terrible fear of death. What can I do? And Christian writes, when you think about the idea that you're going to die, can you locate the negative self-perception you're buying into that seems so real? Perhaps the thought is something like, I'm going to be destroyed. Or maybe something like, I am powerless. Or perhaps I have no control. Or maybe I am unworthy of love. Christian writes, I think it is worthwhile to locate the negative self-belief that you think the world proves to you, because it's important to identify the fear-generating perception so that you can actually go and feel, yes, actually feel that feeling itself. Rather than getting lost in countless thoughts about the feeling, just go into the felt sense. Why is this helpful? Our actual non-physical nature is one of immortality and power and joy and love. That is our lasting, true nature. While we are physical, when we buy into perceptions that are not in alignment with the actual truth of that, we suffer. So here's a teaching that this clearly comes from Abraham and several others, that the suffering you experience when you look at a life situation or another person and you judge it as bad or wrong, the suffering you're experiencing in that moment, the pain or discomfort, is a product of the mismatch between the interpretation you're choosing about that event or person and the true nature of that event or person, or the interpretation that the Creator has chosen about that event or person. The discomfort we feel is when we choose a different meaning for, value for, use of life than the Creator itself, than the flow of life itself. So we are creating our discomfort, we're creating our tightness and tension, we're creating our resistance. And the next question is, what do you do with that? So Christian writes, to back up a little bit and get back to his writing, our actual, true, non-physical nature is the nature of immortality, power, joy, and love. That's our true nature. And as long as we're in the physical, if we buy into any perceptions that are not in alignment with true immortality, power, joy, and love, that's when we create our suffering. We are terrified when we buy into some identity or perception that isn't the truth about us. For example, in truth, it is absolutely impossible for us to be destroyed. So when we buy into the perception that we can be destroyed, we start to suffer. In truth, we are incredibly powerful beings. So when we buy into a perception that we are powerless, we suffer. In truth, we are absolutely deeply loved and adored and can never lose that. So when we buy into a perception that we are unworthy of love, we suffer. Finding the actual negative feeling itself, going right to the root of it, brings the light of awareness to it. And that is incredibly powerful because always on the other side of the suffering and fear is the truth of your powerful, immortal nature. If we want to actually know that experientially, all right, so if we want to actually know this experientially, we need to be willing to feel whatever it is we're actually feeling. That is, we need to be willing to go towards what is actually real in the present moment, including our feelings, regardless of how intense they are. Rather than just avoiding what we actually feel and spinning our wheels in the endless ideas of the local mind, trying to come up with ways to rationalize our circumstances. We need to be willing to see past our own ego's many stories and strategies, and we need to actually feel what is down there. We need to be brave enough to actually meet reality and meet our actual experience, including all of the feelings that are down there. Down there meaning in our depth, in the immediacy of the moment. He writes, because ultimately, underneath all of that, all of whatever we might be rejecting, underneath it all, reality is rooted in hope and joy. It's not rooted in loss and death. Now, that's not something we get to experience much from our current perspective in the physical, because there are few, if any, of us who are in the physical who are experiencing that endless energy, I'm going to live forever kind of clarity. And that's because of the veil or the amnesia that he's written about so much. The next question is, I am constantly thinking about all the bad things that are happening in the world. There is so much suffering, and it constantly occurs to me how many other people and animals are being hurt. The only thought that keeps me sane is that, quote, suffering is always temporary, close quotes. But it's not enough to give me peace of mind. I'm often able to think through negative thoughts with logic, but I can't, quote, logic my way out, close quotes, of this predicament. Besides, it's clearly true. How can I cope with this? Christian writes, start with your experience itself. Before you've thought anything at all, look at reality exactly for what it is. And at your present moment, this present moment for exactly what it is, before the ideas get applied. If you do that without labeling anything, you will find that even when certain sensory data is happening or when certain feelings are in your body, even in those moments, there is no distress yet. Distress occurs only when the thinking mind arrives to serve you with an interpretation you have previously labeled as important. A kind of a yeah, but thought. Give yourself permission to even let that go. Why do that? To logic your way out is an activity of the local thinking mind. And the piece of capital B being that transcends all form is not found in the logical thinking mind. It's found in exactly what you really are and in what the present moment actually is. So if you want to find the truth of what you really are, the truth of life itself, you've got to come awake and aware in the moment. You cannot figure it out. Michael Ryce says the number one pseudo solution of the non-being mind. He says the non-being mind, the egoic mind, conscious logical mind, has a cheap copy of everything that was given to us as spiritual beings and spiritual strengths and skills and tools. And he says the number one cheap copy of these traits or skills or tools, the number one cheap copy is, I'm going to figure it out. And so here Christian's talking about the trap of trying to logic your way out. The problem of that is that the answer is never in the logical thinking mind. The peace of being, capital B, being awake and aware in the moment, the peace of being transcends form and is not found in the conscious logical thinking mind. So we're looking for, one of the ways I was talking about it in the past few years is we're looking to upgrade our graphic user interface. Whatever we're using to interact with life, we're looking to upgrade it from the conscious logical, think your way through, just rehearse and spit back out what was programmed in, to this flowing, alive, creative, expansive access to intuition, inspiration. How do we upgrade that? We put aside the conscious logical mind and we ask to be taught. We ask to be shown. So Christian goes on, he says, that peace that passes all understanding doesn't only serve to deeply relieve you, it also permits you to regain power to actually help this place for the better. Because when you're connected to what is true, actually true, your true nature, the one mind, the Christ mind, etc., when you're connected to that, you can and will help heal the world almost automatically. Otherwise, while you're in distress, you're lost as a small part of the problem. I have a regular message from people that, I can't do this. How can you do that? You're turning your attention away from the truth of life. You shouldn't be doing that. You're putting your head in the sand, etc. So how I refute that, or what I say in response to that, is simply, if you have the ability, if you've got the resources, the money, the power, the reach to dramatically affect things on a physical level, if you're thinking about there's so much war on the planet, there's so much starvation, there's so much people mistreating, if you have the ability to get food over into these places where people are in desperate need of it, please take the action and go do that. And do a meditation and reconnect with your true nature. Choose to use this mind energy, as Dr. Michael Ryce talks about it from the ancient Aramaic. Choose to use it with the awareness that it's always on and it's always creating, and it's always going to create more of whatever I point it towards. So that way, at least, I am a good steward of the creative ability I've been given. In any given moment, and I quote this quite often from Abraham. Abraham says, your greatest creation in any moment is your emotion in that moment. It's not, carving the statue of David or painting the Mona Lisa or putting up the Golden Gate Bridge. That's not your greatest achievement. Your greatest achievement in any given moment is the emotion you're creating and the energy you're kind of sautéing in. You're just kind of marinating in these energies from your core, from your heart and mind. And whatever you pour your mind energy into as a particular focus, you you amplify and you send out from you, and you're contributing to the soup, the quantum soup, right? The connection of all that is. And that is something you could choose. In this moment, if you're choosing for something less than love, in this work, the invitation is choose again. Like Diederik Wolzak chose that phrase for his work. Choose again. The choose again method of forgiveness. 6 steps. Diederik Wolzak. Why? Because his work is also steeped in the Course in Miracles. His work comes from reading and applying what he was given from the Course in Miracles at a time when he was, considering ending his life. So if there's no comments or questions, I'll just remind people, please feel free to unmute and speak up. The next question in the Q&A is, should we focus on resisting pride and lowering ourselves so that the ego doesn't grow and try to distract us from doing our best? And Christian writes, this comment is subtle, but I feel might help someone. Trying to control the ego or resist our negative impulses does most certainly have its place, but doing so can often be ego. In my own case, the walk has not primarily been about resistance, but about acceptance and surrender. It is helpful to remember that duality itself is not fundamentally true, right? It's not our true nature. The true nature is this, Planck's constant, that which underlies everything, is that connected experience, being, energy, consciousness, whatever you want to call it. So it's helpful to remember that when I see myself as being separate from other people and things, it's an optical delusion, as Einstein would say. He writes, it is thus not just a matter of pushing really hard in one direction, even in the direction that we think of as resisting pride. If we're resisting something, usually if we look deep enough, we can find the fear that compulsion is striving to cover up. For instance, fears associated with negative self-perceptions, such as I'm just not good enough, or I'm powerless, or I'm trapped, or I'm unworthy of love. So those fears need to be met, fully felt, and not covered over, and not fought. You don't want to fight with them. You don't want to argue with them. They aren't fundamentally real anyway. But when we don't know that, we resist them like crazy. And as we feel fully and integrate, we allow these feelings to fully come up in us and we integrate them. We process through those fears. We release the compulsion that we were once striving against. As we release it, it vanishes on its own. Until that happens, intentionally resisting our negative impulses can have its place, and sometimes it has its place. However, true peace lies deeper than the fear that gives rise to the struggle. So the idea is, can I go into, face, feel fully, and release whatever fears might be there, and just sit there without trying to do things to mitigate or change the situation, or so that I can get at what's underneath the fear. Because when I see it fully, it will lose its power to disrupt my life. The next category is titled Healing, and the question is healing always possible? And Christian writes, yes, period. He writes, while we're heavily limited by the rule set of the physical universe and the constraints of biology, and while that limitation does effectively limit when healing may occur, it is technically always possible to heal because the physical expression arises from something deeper, and that something deeper has the true power. Because of this, nothing is truly impossible. Next question is, do you have any suggestions on how to heal anxiety, depression, and pain? And Christian writes, this question is incredibly unique for each person. At least in my own walk, I feel that true healing is not simply the kind where you realize a physically better or a more homeostatic state. In parentheses, he writes, though such a state tends to naturally result when deeper spiritual healing occurs, close parentheses. But it's not just seeking that state. He says, I feel true healing happens at a deep personal level. The thought, quote, I have integrated that part of my experience, close quotes. Healing the permanent kind where you are forever more because of it. So it's not about escaping. It's not about running away from. It's not about drugging. It's not about having surgeries and cutting things out. It's about this deeper level of integration and healing experience, that kind of a permanent shift. And he writes here, that's very hard to speak to or to make suggestions about because it's so different for every person. But he writes, but I'll still make one suggestion for consideration. Rather than trying to achieve some state or some configuration of circumstances, bring your being to bear on your relationship to the present moment itself. And that means your relationship with the pain itself as well, whenever it is there. And ask yourself questions like, what are you? Are you the pain? No, you aren't. You are the experiencer of the pain, not the pain itself. When you are in deep depression, the pain feels like it will never end. That is a lie. Meanwhile, since you are not the pain, but rather the experiencer of it, you do not have to resist or fight it. In fact, you can even welcome it when it arrives. Let it in for tea. Don't deny and don't identify. Don't try to push it away. Don't try to grab it and make it your own. Just be with it. Be with it fully. Feel it fully. Notice the tendency to label it and let the labels go. It's an experience of form passing through your awareness. This depression, this anger, this sadness, this fear is an experience of form passing through your awareness. It does not need your judgment. It does not need your action. It needs your love, your willingness, your understanding. Just watch it, be with it, feel it fully, and allow. I came to saying to quite a few people in the past few years, just immerse and allow. Immerse and allow. Breathe and soften and immerse and allow. And that's what he's writing here. Christian's writing. Just watch it, be with it, feel it fully, and allow it. Be loving and patient with yourself as you feel what you feel. Feel it to heal it. I feel the goal should not be to escape the pain at whatever cost, but rather I feel that healing is a natural byproduct of your willingness to be fully present with whatever darkness or pain or fear you moments before you were resisting. Resistance causes pain. Acceptance relieves it. Being fully with whatever darkness or pain or fear you've been resisting when it arises requires bravery and willingness to feel, willingness to be weak, willingness to just be whatever you are right now. And the question arises, are you brave enough to be present with that deeply and completely? Are you brave enough to really feel? It cannot kill you to feel, though it might feel like. True healing is not primarily about fixing up the boards of the house of your story to survive the terrible tornado of your circumstances and your feelings. True healing is about walking into the tornado, letting it toss you through the sky, landing, and then, without your doing, but because of your willingness, then the tornado has lost its power. Once you hear the message of your pain and you honor it with your willingness to feel it, it can go, it can move on. And you will be forever more as the great experiencer that you are. For truly, you are greater than any darkness or pain that may arrive into your experience, no matter how incredibly extreme it may seem in any given moment. You are truly greater than any darkness or pain that may arise into your experience, no matter how incredibly extreme that darkness or pain may seem in any given moment. So he says, take heart, be strong, and fear not. This moment is powerful. So, I read that twice because clearly we are not taught to think of ourselves as bigger, deeper, richer, stronger, more connected to all that is than any problem we will ever encounter. We're not trained to think of ourselves and just to start not just thinking of ourselves, but to experience ourselves outside of all the labels, to experience ourselves with awareness, with the awakened breath, with our attention focused on the present moment and all that is being experienced and given to us in the moment. So I read it twice because the fact of the matter is, Michael Ryce likes to talk about how kings don't want you to know this, right? Kings don't want you to know that you're a powerful creator. Kings, or anybody who's trying to control you, doesn't want you to know that you're greater than any darkness or pain that may arise or arrive into your experience. And that's no matter how intense that pain or extreme that situation might be. You're powerful beyond words. This moment is powerful beyond words. You'll never encounter anything that is bigger, deeper, stronger than you, and or that could take something of value away from you, or that could prevent you from acquiring something of value that you desperately need to move to the next level in your life. You are already whole and complete just as you are. The next category is titled Apparent Paradoxes. And the question, right, is how can there be both free will and predestination? Are both true? And Christian writes, yes, we always have free will. But that free will must work within the available decision space, as Tom Campbell terms it. quote, decision space, close quotes. And this is Tom Campbell. He's written the 3 books, My Big Toe, My Big Theory of Everything. But he writes here, we always have free will, but that free will must work within the available decision space, within the context and the constraints that we have accepted in this physical incarnation, within whatever possible choices exist. So it's not as completely free and clear as it might be in a non-physical state, because here we're dealing with the constraints of the physical. He writes, the binding of the local decision-making self, the human being, within this form, and this consistent, firm structure of the physical universe, binding us into this and restricting us to a few ranges of choices, is done intentionally. The simulation of the physical universe follows certain rules for its operation, and while the free will of all participants operates within the context of those rules, the system is extremely good at predicting outcome, even very far in advance. That can appear like predestination. However, free will always remains. So unanticipated outcomes do happen. Again, when we talk about paradoxes, he's got this apparent paradoxes as the title of this next section. And I like to bring up the idea that, and I forget exactly where I ran across this, but it's entirely useful to think in terms of whenever I believe I've hit a paradox, I've hit a wall, and these two things seem to be true and they can't both be true. Whenever that logical format strikes me, I can be certain that I'm only looking at a tiny fragment of the whole big picture. And if I could see more, if I could get that 30,000 foot perspective, I would see there's no paradox, there's no contradiction. Now, if all I can see is what we call the visible light spectrum, and I can't see the infrared or the ultraviolet, and the infrared and the ultraviolet are causing quite a bit of disruption, and I look and I say, wow, there's no reason for all this disruption. Then it seems like a paradox. Gee, why are we having all this disruption? But then if I put on a pair of goggles that lets me see the infrared and the ultraviolet, and I see exactly how that's causing disruption, now there's no more paradox. Now there's no more conflict. There's no more oxymoron. It all fits if I can see the whole picture. The next question he has here is, I can't grasp the idea of eternity. How are we eternal? Eternity seems like such a long time. And Christian writes, considering eternity from the physical vantage point seems overwhelming because we're doing so from within structured linear time. Consciousness itself is not bound to that time. Beingness is not beholden to some thing that we call time. Beingness creates systems with linear time for its own purposes. So eternity is not a burden, but rather time is a manifestation of the abundance of being. It's a very, very tricky thing. I love the way Krishnamurti talks about it and how that time is a product of thought. If we weren't thinking about it, we wouldn't have any concept or experience of time. And when we get out of our rigid, obsessive, spinning thinking pattern of thought, we lose track of time. Right? we're doing something that seems like we've been doing it for 3 hours, and we look up and 5 minutes has passed on the clock, or vice versa. It seems like I've only been doing this for 5 minutes, and it was 4 hours ago that I started. I don't want to go too deep here. I don't want to get too far off the line, but the idea of time, the fact that time is just an idea, how we can start to observe this for ourselves, how we can start to observe the conditioning that's been done to us, that we've had, foisted upon us. If we step into that experience, then we don't think of time as a burden. We don't think of eternity as a burden. The next question is, you say that linear time is specific to our local physical reality system, and you also say that you experienced a progression of events in non-physical realms. If linear time is specific to our reality, how can there be a progression of events in those higher realms? And Christian writes, this is another question that is almost impossible to speak about from the Earth perspective, since we're operating from within linear time right now. So it's almost impossible to talk about it because we're talking about it with language that was developed in linear time, in a reality, in a constraint set that has the constraints of linear time, etc. But he says, I'll just say this. Local physical linear time is a construct that exists within, quote, higher time, close quotes. And sequence exists in that, quote, higher time, close quotes. Meanwhile, simultaneously, everything, everywhere is happening in the one now present moment. And as he keeps saying, the conscious logical mind in the physical realm, as a spirit, as a soul, as a body, as a human, whatever you want to talk about it, get almost impossible to try to make sense of these words and the concepts of time and linear time, and how there could be a space or an existence in which there was more than just linear time. It's not that there isn't linear time, it's just that that's not all there is. There's more. There's a deeper, richer experience that goes beyond what words can describe. The next question here is, are we separate or are we one with all? Which is it? And Christian writes, from the human perspective, the following statement can seem like a paradox. However, it is not. And the statement is this: you are both one with all that is, and also simultaneously you are an individual. In higher realms, both of these truths are simultaneously known, and they do not contradict. Right now, you may sense deep down in you the yearning for connection with others and with nature, and a yearning for love or the unity of all that is, and also sense the deep preciousness of you as consciousness and as an individual. He writes, the self in parentheses. Both of those are simultaneously fully true and known in the higher realms, that you are connected to everything and that you have your individual characteristics. In parentheses, he writes, though there are states of being that we can enter that are, quote, further, close quotes, in one experiential direction for time. For instance, the human condition is quite a deep experience of separation, right? We experience deeply, profoundly what it's like to be alone and isolated and separated. And yet, at another level of scale, there is no separation. Everything is connected. So I'm going to stop the parade of writing and ask if there's any comment or question. I have received a text message that Celinda was not able to get on because of tech difficulties. So thank you for being here, those that are here. I was just thinking in terms of these last few things we're reading about and the idea of loneliness and how, here's this poem that I wrote back in graduate school. If a time should come when you stop and reflect and you wonder why people seldom seem to connect, think of the confines of teeth, skin, and bone. It's no wonder we often feel so alone. How is it then that we ever get close? It's when we reach with our hearts that we grasp the most. And yet we're in this physical body and we're given this intense, specific experience of individuality and separation. And one of the twists that we're not trained into, we're not made aware of, is that we get to label and interpret whatever these energies are that we experience. So yeah, I can return home at the end of a long day and say, gee, I'm lonely. Right? It's an empty house or an empty apartment, and I can label whatever I'm experiencing in that moment as lonely. And yet, it is just a label that I've put on. It doesn't change the fact that I'm safe, I'm healthy, the living quarters are whatever they are, clean or not so clean. I'm there alone or I'm with someone else. If I'm there with somebody else and we're not getting along, we might have this conflict brewing. And yet, I don't have to label that lonely. I could label that quiet. I could label it relaxed. I could label it comfortable. I could label it peaceful. We are always throwing the labels on whatever we're experiencing. And we're not taught that. We're not taught how actively we are creating our experience of life. So I have a few people I've been dealing with recently, and they're going through these ups and downs. They're going through the flow of life that life has taken a left turn, and they thought it was supposed to be going straight or veer off to the right. And some of those people have been writing to me about the ache of the loneliness. And it's fascinating how with just a little bit of a shift in perspective or some journaling or some reality management worksheets, people can shift and literally have the same physical, visceral sensations, but label it something else. So instead of the loneliness, someone becomes aware that they're processing grief. Instead of loneliness, someone becomes aware that they're feeling a freedom, they're feeling unfettered, they're feeling this myriad parade of thoughts and a parade of a myriad of thoughts and possibilities. And it's exciting. It's stirring up an energetic response in them that is not familiar. And so instead of being present and slowing down and analyzing it and saying, oh, this feels different, they jump to some familiar label of loneliness or pain or sadness. And if you leave it in that unexamined state, and then you keep wishing it was different than it actually is, then that's what we just finished reading in the Christian Sundberg book, then we generate all this pain. We generate all this discomfort that we say we don't want. And we do it simply by not wanting whatever the flow of life itself is. We have the resistance that comes up, and that's that the act of resisting the flow is exactly what creates the flavor and intensity of the discomfort or pain that we experience. So,
Dr. Tim,
yes.
I wonder if Christian Sundberg experiences what you're just talking about. Would he have written a poem like that, knowing where, with the knowledge of where he came from and the fact that is it part of just the human condition because we experience ourselves as separate that we're going to, I don't feel lonely practically ever, but I do want things, which is maybe another way of saying lonely. I feel sometimes unconnected, unable to really connect. That was a
Well,
very nice poem.
one of your questions there was, is this just part of the human condition? And I would have to
Yeah,
say yes,
yeah.
right? And that's all part of what Christian's writing about here in this book is that however he's come to it, whether it's through the writings of Tom Campbell or his own guides or his own knowledge from a pre-birth experience, Christian has come to the idea that we're here specifically to build the muscle, to build the strength of being able to choose for love in more and more difficult situations. And one of those difficult situations might be, gee, I want something to be other than it is right now. I don't want to be
Right.
sitting here alone, or I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to be cold, or I don't want to be hot, or, I don't want to be in the presence of someone who's laughing because I take it personally as though they're laughing at me.
Mm.
Anything that we resist at least has the potential for producing pain in us. If it doesn't instantly produce pain, it's got the potential to do that.
When he was in his non-physical or whatever it was before he chose to come to Earth again, yes, he chose to come here to learn whatever he needed to learn, but is he saying that he was I guess he wasn't complete there because he had to
Listen,
learn some
listen,
things.
listen, listen. It's so good that you're doing this, right? Just listen to the words you're spinning. Just breathe and soften here, right? You're spinning because you're trying to make I've got this image of the ocean and we're trying to put it in our cooler to take it home with us, right?
Mm,
There's so much going on.
mm,
You're not going to find words to contain this. Now, in the general area you're asking about, well, listen, if he's in a bliss state, right? If he's whole and complete just as he is, why did he need to come here,
right.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
and the answer given over and over again is you didn't need to come here. If you needed to come here, that would mean you didn't have free will, right? You need do nothing is one of these principles, one of these fundamental spiritual teachings. So how could this be? Again, if it seems like it can't be, they can't both be true, all that means is I don't have a broad enough, deep enough view of all that's going on. So it seems like it's a contradiction or it
Mm,
seems like it's a paradox, but it's not. It's just that I can't see it from here and or I can't generate the words that would, usefully be useful in depicting it from here.
mm.
So here's a way of How presumptuous, Tim. Here's what I'm going to clarify for you what Christian was writing in his book. I have no idea if this is clarification at all, but so this comes to me. So here's the idea. You've got Sue Bingham, and she's happy as a clam, and she's doing amazingly well with her son moving and her relationship with her husband and her grandsons. Everything's starting to work out like crazy. It's just, not perfect, but it's going better and better, right?
Mm,
Now, in that situation, Susan goes out to a music event, a live music event, and she hears a style of music she's never heard before. And she decides it's it's grabbing at her heartstrings and she wants to go learn about this. Now, does Susan Bingham need to go learn this new musical genre? No,
mhm,
right? Is she not going to get to heaven if she doesn't learn this? No.
mm,
Are people on the other side of the planet going to starve unless she learns this? No. And yet, she may have a calling,
mm,
right? She may decide, I'm going to spend big chunks of my time, intelligence, money, and energy for a while immersing myself in this new style of music or this new instrument just because it struck your fancy,
mm,
right?
mhm,
All right. So think about it this way. In ways you can't even think about, we can't have words for, Christian Sundberg is floating around someplace in some level of reality that has no physical body, and he experiences another spark of divine mind that plays like a different kind of music than he's ever heard before,
mm,
right? And he
mhm,
says to this other consciousness, I want to sing that song like you're singing it, or I want to play that instrument like you're playing it. And the consciousness says to him, okay, a lot of people say that, but you know, you can't just wish for it. You have to have this physical experience, etc. Are you sure you want to do it? And yes. So in that context, Christian would have been just fine if he met somebody. He said, wow, that's fabulous. Look at, you've got this aspect to you I've never experienced when being in someone's presence like this before. And the guy says, oh yeah, it's great. And I want it. And well, be careful because it's a lot of work. Oh, really? It's a lot of work? Okay, well, I've just done a lot of work in other areas, so never mind. But it's
mm.
nice meeting you. And
Yeah.
Christian would be just fine.
Mhm,
This is the point. You don't have to come here. Now you're sitting here in the middle of your muddle, so to speak, in your physical aches and pains and limitations, wishing it was different, building some kind of a spiritual mecca in your mind that you're supposed to be reaching for or towards, and assessing it and saying, oh, I'm not there yet. I'm not good enough. Something's wrong. You don't need to. If you could see the whole big picture, if you could just breathe and soften into the whole big picture, you would tap into that peace that passes all understanding. So I don't have any idea whether I muddied the waters or cleared them up a little bit, but
well, you said you read something early in the show. Somebody wrote in to Christian Sundberg and said, there are people starving, there are animals suffering. I think I live a lot into that awareness. And this doesn't hit me during the day. This is what happens to my brain when I wake up in the middle of the night. And you were very helpful when you said, oh, well, don't think of it as something bad. Think that you're processing. And that was extremely helpful to think that this is processing going on. But it does involve the condition of other people and animals.
it does involve your thoughts about the condition of other people and animals.
Oh, well, but they have their condition anyway, whether I'm having a thought about it or
That's
not.
absolutely right, but there's no effect on you in the way that you're talking about manipulating unless you're having thoughts about it.
Well, that's true, but well, and then you said if you can be peaceful, you'll be much more effective. Hang on one second. I've got to mute myself, so carry on for a second.
Well, we're at the end of our time, so
Okay.
I will thank you again for your
All right.
call and your comment as always. And
All right.
we have our
It's
support
nice.
group tonight from 6:30 to 9 Central Time. All the information you would need to join us is available on the mindshiftersacademy.org website. We come from love. We're made of the stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. Blessings. Thanks for being here.